Ampire. Hey babies, hey babies, hey babies, hey babies, hey babies. Hi everyone, hi everyone, hi everyone, hi everyone. No Callow today, on tape, me and you. A couple of good segments though. Voice of the Lions, Dan Miller. Long time for all you old sports radio heads around here. You're going to know the name. He was here for a very long time, but he's been in Detroit for years now, and of course they've had a resurgence. So we talked about the Lions and where they are as we get set for the divisional game this weekend, and then my weekly visit with London Fletcher post our calls together, part of the Booth Review podcast. I'll play that for you as well, and then I'll give you some thoughts on Mike McCarthy not returning as the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. But let's start with the game and the matter at hand. Commanders-Lions, Saturday night in Detroit, and here's my conversation with the voice of the Detroit Lions, Dan Miller. Let me welcome in the longtime voice of the Detroit Lions, Dan Miller, as we get set for the divisional round of the playoffs. Lions off a bye, Commanders, the fairy tale Cinderella of the ball. Hello, Dan. How are you?
Hey, Bram, I'm doing well. How are you? Congrats, man.
Thank you.
Ride you guys have had.
It is quite a ride. I'll just warn you up front, don't leave us any time on the clock. We've won every game over the last 6 weeks on the last play of the game. You don't want to do that with us.
Yeah, no, it's been crazy to watch. I mean, obviously, I still have a lot of fans back there from, friends of mine and family that are keeping tabs on things, and they let me know how it's going. So,
yeah.
It's good to see. I'm really happy because, much like in Detroit, I know fans there suffered for a long time and had to deal with a lot of garbage. And, I've told people the best part of my job here with the way things have turned around is seeing the fans happy.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's so much of that in D.C. and Virginia and Maryland. It's the same thing. So I'm happy for you.
I want to talk to you about the last couple of years of the Lions before we get into this game, because there are a lot of similarities. Like, obviously, the Lions hadn't won in a long time, and really Washington hadn't either. I have to go back to my childhood to remember them being a consistent winner, and it's been a long time. And this year, there was a level, honestly, early, Dan, of disbelief, I think for everybody, because it's one thing that the quarterback's good or that Dan Quinn's a good coach and things are different, but the way they were winning, it was kind of hard to believe it was happening to us. And I wonder if you go back a couple of years ago when the Lions started actually winning, if there was any, if you relate to that at all.
No doubt. And I mean, I think it's a great point and one I can absolutely relate to with what people went through here. It was an element of trusting it. It was an element of believing it was real because there'd been so many times, in particular, look, the Lions were good in the 90s. They didn't have a quarterback. If you take a decent quarterback and put him on those teams with Barry Sanders and Herman Moore and Chris Spielman and Benny Blades, that's probably a Super Bowl team. But they didn't have one. And then you get a long drought. Then Stafford comes in and he and Calvin dragged them to some victories and won some games, made the playoffs a couple times. But it was never really anything that you could sink your teeth into that felt like it was long lasting. So I think people had a hard time trusting once this team started turning it around in 2022 that it was real. And even into 2023, there was this feeling that something's going to go wrong. The other shoe's going to drop. They're going to blow a game. Then they win a playoff game against the Rams and win a playoff game against the Bucs, and they get to the game against San Francisco. And even though that one was kind of an ugly event with the way it went down in the second half, I think people started to believe what was happening here during that whole run. And it's on paper, man. It is never had in the past because it's drafting good players, developing good players, building a good depth chart, and all of a sudden you look up and man, there's a lot of good young players here. There's a lot of players here that would be among the best in the league at their position. And I think it took a while to actually buy into that. But, man, it's hard to get over all those times that you fell for the head fake. And I think that's what Lions fans ultimately had to do.
Yeah.
There's a saying in Detroit, it's SOL, it's same old Lions. It's taking a long time to get rid of that.
Yeah, I think here and in every story, I mean, for to be successful, this, like, it's got to be everything. And for us to kind of quantify what's going on here, it's a lot. Like, it's not just this quarterback, it's this coaching staff, it's this front office, it's new ownership. It's all kind of gelled very quickly to give them a shot to be good. And we feel like we have a basis of where we're going from here. For you all, was it Dan Campbell? Like, what really kind of brought it together a couple of years ago?
Yeah, I would also say, in fairness to some of the Lions fans that weren't believing, there was a 3-13-1 in Campbell's first year when they tore everything down and built this thing back up from the studs, which was a conscious choice to do that. In particular, once Matthew Stafford said, you know what, I've had enough, I want to move on. And that was best for him, and frankly, it was best for the franchise. It was just time for them both to go in their own directions. And that's not a knock in any way on Matthew. It's just it had run its course. But, look, it's everything, Bram. It's what you just said. And it gives you an appreciation for what they didn't have here for so long. It's not just drafting players. The Lions drafted a lot of good players over the years. They just didn't develop them. Guys don't come into this league understanding how to play in the NFL. You need to teach them what it is to be a pro football player, what it means to be a Lion, and it has to fit your mold of what your players are. You look at teams like the Ravens or teams like the Steelers that do it every single year. They know what a Raven or a Steeler looks like, and they very rarely dip or have real bad years. The Lions, we had so many years and so many draft classes where guys never even got to second contract. They came in with high hopes, then they would just show a little bit of promise and fade out, or no promise at all. And it's just, now there's a system, there's coaching, there's player procurement, there's player development, and you see it on the field. And it has to be that way. If you're not doing all of that, then you're never going to build anything that has a foundation that has the ability to last.
And one of the players, and it's funny, you mentioned quarterback back in the 90s. Why has it worked so well for Jared Goff there?
Well, I think, number one, you had two people when that trade was made that absolutely believed in him, and Brad Holmes and Ray Agnew, who had been in management with the Rams when he was there and had his best days. And they believed that if they brought him here, and I'll be honest, Bram, they may have been outside of that building alone in that belief. I think Dan Campbell probably was in that camp too. But they believed that if you brought him here and set him up with the right people around him and gave him support, which he had clearly lost in Los Angeles, that he could be back to being a good starting quarterback in this league. Did they think he could be what he is now? I don't know. But if you look at what he did for the Rams, he had some pretty good years.
Yeah.
He did take a team to the Super Bowl and was right there. So I think what's worked for him is support. I think it's been a great relationship with Ben Johnson. I think it has been just a period where he began to believe in himself again. And I think when he got here, his self-esteem was pretty low. And we did a pregame show a couple years ago, preseason show a couple years ago, first day of camp. And one of my co-hosts asked him, what have you learned about you've been here? This was going into the 23 season when they had finished 8-2 the year before. He said, I've learned I'm tougher than I ever thought I was.
Huh.
And that's a pretty deep thing, because it just tells you that he had been through some difficult times and maybe not handled it the way that he could have or should have or had the ability to even. But when he came here, man, it was really them trying to put him in the best possible position and just keep building him up, and you see the byproduct of that.
So you said the name Ben Johnson, which, as you know, around here, I don't think anyone is too upset anymore because of how things have worked out here. But obviously this team at least wanted to have a serious conversation with him, and he chose to stay. Can you kind of give us some context? Because you're around him. Why did he not want a head coaching job a year ago?
I think, and it's really been 2 years, because he pulled himself out of consideration the year before that as well. I just think there has to be, and this is me reading the tea leaves, it's not something that I've sat down over beers and discussed with Ben Johnson, but it is something that obviously we've all given a lot of thought to here, because we didn't want him to leave, and then we had to guess, well, why didn't he leave? And I just really think, number one, he likes it here. He's comfortable here. He's got a great gig here. He's got a quarterback. He's got a head coach that gives him autonomy. And I think that his family's happy here. I think all those things, I think it's got to be a perfect situation for him to leave. And this is not me commenting on the situation in Washington or ownership or anything like
Yeah.
that, because I don't know how he viewed it. But obviously there was something there that he wasn't comfortable with, or maybe they weren't comfortable with him. Whatever it was, it just didn't work out. But that's not the only place where that's been the case. He pulled himself out of contention in Carolina a couple of years ago. It's just my read on it, Bram, is it's got to be everything in place for him to want to leave because he feels like he has a great situation here.
Yeah.
And I don't really have any more depth to it than that. He's a good dude who, treats people fairly, and I think will be a head coach at some point, maybe in this cycle. I just don't know ultimately what that final piece to the puzzle is going to be where he says, yeah, okay, this is it for me. I'm going to go.
They have a very, very good offense. You were number one in the league this year, right, Dan? You guys ended up that way?
Led the league in scoring, yeah.
Yeah. Why? What stirs the drink there?
The offensive line. They have built this thing around the offensive line. You got a number one draft pick at right tackle, center, and left tackle. You got a good guard who's been here, left, and came back in Graham Glasgow, and a guy who made the Pro Bowl last year in Zeitler when he was with the Ravens. It's not by accident. They've put a lot of assets into the offensive line, and they've already paid Panay, and they've already paid Ragnow, and they've already paid Decker. So these are guys that are in here, but they've gotten second contracts here and been paid big money. They want to run the ball. They want to protect Jared Goff. And that's really where it starts. I mean, people could talk about Amon-Ra and Jahmyr Gibbs and Goff and, Laporta and J-Mo, and they should talk about them because they're all really good players. But it really starts with that offensive line. That offensive line is the face of this team. That group is what gives the rest of this team confidence when they take the field that they can win because they believe that they can control games with those guys, whether they have to kill the clock on the ground or give Jared time to throw the ball. And it really starts there. Now, look, Goff has been terrific. I mean, he's put up historic numbers if you look at some of the things that he's done in completion percentage and the numbers that he has. And Gibbs is proven to be one of the most explosive running backs in this league. And Amon-Ra is one of the best receivers in this league. And Laporta, didn't have the numbers this year that he had last year, but he's an outstanding tight end. And J-Mo is a one-play touchdown waiting to happen. So, look, there's a lot of talent over there. And it adds up to an explosive unit with a really talented offensive coordinator that has a great feel for calling plays and a quarterback that's usually on the exact same page as him. So it's by design. They've put a lot into it. There's a lot of high draft picks on that side of the ball.
On the other side of the ball, obviously the story's been injuries. How have they overcome them, and can they in this playoff run?
It's a great question, and I think it's one that we've waited to see answered every week, and then we've said, okay, because there's probably been another injury, answer it again. But let's go back to belief, and let's go back to suspending any sort of, doubt that you may have. It's been hard to get past losing one of the top 5 defensive ends in football in Aiden, losing one of the top interior defensive linemen in football in Aleem McNeil, losing our best cornerback in Carlton Davis, losing for a long time Alex Anzalone, who's kind of the glue piece of that defense that holds it together, and then losing Derek Barnes, who was probably the third best linebacker on the team, losing the fourth best linebacker on the team in Rodriguez. It's just been strange. And then, Ifeatu Melifonwu, who played a huge role for this team at the end of last year, was expected to do so again this year, didn't play until about 3 weeks ago. So it was just injury after injury after injury. Davenport, who was expected to start on the opposite side of Hutch, he went down in the second or third game of the season and missed the whole year. So it's been crazy. I've never seen one side of the ball decimated the way that it has been. But again, there's still good players out there. Maybe the best safety combination in the league. In Kirby Joseph was a first-team All-Pro, and Brian Branch, who if you ask a lot of people, they may tell you, for what's out there right now, he's the best defensive player on this team. And some other guys that have just chipped in. Jack Campbell is just rock solid. So it's to your question, I don't know the answer to that. And we find out week by week because you're not as confident about that group as you were when they had everybody there and all the talent was in place. But, man, it seems like they've just found a way to do it. In that Minnesota game where they held the Vikings out of the end zone, and look, Sam Darnold had a really bad game. But, holding Minnesota to 3 field goals was kind of in a critical moment with everything on the line was kind of like a wow game. But look, this is a new challenge coming in this week with, a young quarterback who's playing unbelievable and presents all sorts of problems for you. And they're going to have to prove it all over again.
Is this the year? What do you think?
Look, this is a year where they have a good shot.
Yeah.
And this is the offense is the equalizer for them because it gives them a chance to win any game. Because if they have to win 42-40 or something like that, they have a chance to do that because that group can put up those kind of numbers. But look, if you have an off day and you have a couple of turnovers, it can end right there. I mean, they have to go out and play their style of ball against Washington to win this game. And that is, you can't give Daniel short fields. You can't let their defense score points. You can't make mistakes. You can't do the kind of things that beat you in the NFL. And it's not different than a lot of teams. It's winning the turnover battle and looking at those numbers at the end and running the ball and controlling the ball. If they do those things, I think there is a chance that this could be their year. But, I hedge that by saying that is so fleeting and it can go so quickly if you have a bad quarter and, hand the ball on a platter to the other team. So, look, are they capable? Absolutely. Can they do it? We're going to find out together.
Yeah, we are. This Saturday, too. Saturday night. Dan Miller is the voice of the Lions. Thank you so much for doing this, Dan. And I look forward to catching up with you in Detroit this weekend.
Hey, Bram, safe travels. It'll be great to see you and a bunch of other folks out there. And listen, we're enjoying this. It's a great time of year. We didn't even get to enjoy this. We used to watch everybody else for a long time. So this is fun, and it'll be fun to see you. So safe travels and enjoy.
Up next, a segment from the Booth Review as we look back at the win over Tampa Bay and look ahead to the game against the Lions as the playoffs continue for the first time in 19 years for Washington. This is the Bram Weinstein Show on ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. Welcome back. Every week, day after a win or a loss, London Fletcher and myself, after we spend the day in the booth, get a chance to do the Booth Review podcast through the Commanders. You can get this podcast wherever you get your podcasts or at commanders.com, the Commanders app, the Commanders YouTube page. You can see us do the podcast together. Obviously, you can hear it on audio. And they graciously let me play a segment of this for you every single week so you get an opportunity to hear us react to what we saw and what we called on the field. And, of course, Sunday was historic for the franchise. It was their first playoff win in 19 years. They beat the Buccaneers right at the buzzer, 23-20, and that earns them the right to play in the divisional round of the playoffs for the first time in nearly 2 decades. Tall task, short week, Saturday night kickoff at Detroit, the 1 seed who are coming off of a bye. But before we get too caught in the weeds of what's ahead, we needed to look back. So here was me and London talking through the win over Tampa. 19 years in the making, London. The Commanders get a win yesterday.
Oh, man. What a beautiful game that was. The game plan, the execution, the game-winning field goal. I just marvel at this team and what they're able to accomplish going into that hostile environment. The way they attacked the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense, they attacked them so well that they had to change up things in terms of they were blitz happy coming into the game. And Todd Bowles said, man, we have no answers for this offense. We got to stop blitzing and change up totally. And just a great thing. And to have us win on a game-winning kick that was doinked. We had to make it dramatic in a game-winning field goal.
We wouldn't have it any other way. Since the bye, every game has ended on the last snap. Various different ways. Here's a field goal. Saints game ended on a failed 2-point conversion. A couple touchdowns late with Dallas, Philadelphia. Then touchdown late, overtime for Atlanta. I mean, it's uncanny, and I don't think it's an accident anymore. So I want to get into the details of Tampa, but just in general, I've never seen anything like this where all of the outcomes go one team's way they handle themselves in these late game situations with so much poise and so much calmness that I just don't feel like this is an accident that they win this way.
No, not when it keeps happening over and over and over. In our case, 5 times in a row, 5 consecutive times in a row. The thing about it is they talk about how they practice for these winning time moments, these situational games in the ball game, the execution at a high level when there's high pressure points, high pressure moments in a ball game. And it's a credit to Dan Quinn. We've talked about this multiple times. He has this team prepared for any scenario, especially the late game scenarios where, I don't know about you, but there was no question when we got that ball at the end of the game with 4 minutes and 40 seconds left there was no question in my mind that we were going to have a drive and have a game-winning drive and run out the clock, and that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers weren't going to get another shot with the football.
I mean, I think I've talked about this with you before. You see it too. Quinn is very thorough. Like you learn about them in the access that you get with them. He's very transparent. His messaging is extremely consistent. You know, what he says in one place, you'll hear in another place. They're very thorough. Obviously, the players talk over and over and over about all these winning time moments that they talk about. I remember back at the end of training camp when we were still watching the majority of practices, he had one I stood there for 45 minutes watching them, him with a microphone, shouting out things like 45 seconds left on the clock, 2 timeouts, balls at the 30-yard line, go. And they would go through a sequence, and then he would just grab the microphone again and go, 25 seconds left, balls on their 45, no timeouts, go. And I remember watching him do this and watching them do it, and the fact that here we are at the end of the season, and this is how they're winning, and they do it with so much poise, I think is an attribution of what the coaching staff has instilled in their readiness and preparation for these winning moments.
Yeah, and you can tell that they do it at a higher level than any other team, or definitely the teams that I've seen. Every team has what you call situational football that you practice throughout the week, whether it's third down situations, third and long, third and short, your red zones, your 4-minute offense, 4-minute defense, all those type of things, goal line. But it seems like they take it to an even higher level where there's situations within the situations to where, okay, we got the ball on this yard line, no timeouts, got 2 plays left in the ball game, possibly 2 plays here. This is a scenario, how are we going to execute? And you're practicing that from an offensive standpoint. You're also practicing that from a defensive standpoint. So it seems like they take situational football and even throw situations within those situations, that's next level stuff. And I in my 16 years, I don't recall teams doing it to that high level to where they take it to and wrap it up. And it seems like it's on a week-to-week basis and probably a day-to-day basis, because you don't have these type of performances over and over and over and over and over again without being totally prepared for these scenarios. And you're doing this from an offense standpoint, the rookie quarterback. That's unheard of.
He's not a rookie, or he's unlike any rookie I've ever seen. He is. I said this to you earlier, and it feels like hyperbolic when you say it early in a season. He had the best rookie season any quarterback's ever had, and he's got some metrics to prove that. And now he's winning in the playoffs, and very, very few have double-digit wins, let alone 12. And the circumstances by which he came in here with a turned-over roster and a turned-over front office, turned-over coaching staff, to get through that and have this kind of success is remarkable. And these are some of the numbers from last night. Daniels joins Peyton Manning as the second quarterback in NFL history to lead a team, 0 turnovers, 0 punts in a road playoff game. Daniels' 68.6 completion percentage is the highest in franchise history in a playoff game since Mark Rippon in the 1991 NFC Championship. That's the best season that this team has ever had, and this is the best one since that season. Daniels is the 4th rookie in NFL history to start and win 13 games, including the postseason. Ben Roethlisberger, Joe Flacco, Dak Prescott are the others. He has a qualified completion percentage that's higher than any rookie ever. The only one who ever had one higher was a guy who played for Cleveland in the 1930s when they threw 3 passes a game, right? I mean, I don't even think fine. You want to argue it's not the best rookie quarterback season ever? It's in the top 5, and you have to show me another one that's been better than the way that he's performed this year.
Now, when you mentioned Cleveland in the 1950s, that I immediately thought, like, they probably weren't throwing the football that many times.
5 times a game. Right?
Yeah, the forward pass, I think, had just kind of got introduced to the professional game. I mean, you're spot on with all the things you just said and backing it up with the numbers and the company that he's in. But the fact that it's the game-winning situation 6 seconds left, 8 seconds left, 3 seconds left, whatever the case may be, and he's throwing touchdowns and he's unflappable in the poise in the pocket. The biggest play yesterday, I mean, there were a lot of big plays, but that 3rd and 6 completion to Bram, where he just stands in the pocket and delivers a strike. I mean, against a Bucks defense that they're pretty good at getting after the quarterback, but it's almost like he's out on the practice field. He felt like, hey, nobody's going to hit me. I'm going to trust my protection, and I'm going to deliver an accurate ball to Bram. And it's in that moment. I mean, if we don't convert that 3rd down, we're punting with over 3 minutes left in the ball game. Bucks still have 2 timeouts left. 2 timeouts, maybe even 3. I think they may have had all 3 timeouts left in that ball game. So, I mean, that play right there is outstanding and was outstanding.
You know, we've had a crazy year, obviously, with all the finishes, and here's another one, you know, in this playoff game that occurred. And during the pregame show, before the game, they were playing, you know, what CJ picked his top 5 plays of the year. And obviously, number 1's Hail Mary, and then there's all these other ones. And I went on with Michael Jenkins, who hosts, you know, our pregame show, and he goes, what are your 3 favorite? And I go, well, it's hard not to pick the Hail Mary. And the Cincinnati game to me was the one that really, really stood out, the throw to Terry, because that was like the first of, oh my God, like this guy is doing things at a level that we haven't seen around here. Terry, of course, made an incredible catch. It was the first real big moment of him for what was his best season here in Washington. But the one I picked second was, and I'm going to get back to this because it's talking about, like all these highlights that are getting around, which we appreciate all the attention that everything's getting. It's always these game-winning moments that you're showing. But it's these other plays that he's making is what really, to me, makes him stand out. And the one that I brought up to Michael yesterday was 4th and 11 Philadelphia. Like, that's the one that isn't making the highlight reels, but was the game. He jukes out 7 players on the Eagles' defense to extend a drive in a game they had no business being in, and they won anyway. And then yesterday, there are 2 that stand out to me. De'Ami Brown's was a great one. There's so many of them, they're hard to remember all of them. He threw a pass. This is in the 4th quarter. He threw a pass. Yaya Diaby saw Austin Eckler flare out, left his lane. This is a Pro Bowl caliber rush end. He's standing there. He puts this perfect touch pass over his outstretched arm to Eckler to get a first down. And then the other one, of course, is at the end of the game, 3rd and 1.5. He shakes out of Kalijah Cansey's grasp and gets a first down for 4 yards that salts the game away and gives him a chance to not give Tampa Bay the ball back. These are the spectacular moments. These are the ones they don't show on the highlight reels because they're not the game-winning moments. But to me, these are the ones that stand out and why he's different.
No, you're right. And it's, I think in every game, even the ones where we've lost, you'll have maybe 4 or 5 plays that you can say, man, this is a highlight play. This is a highlight play. This is a highlight play. And it's not even necessarily a touchdown run or a touchdown pass. Is converting on a 3rd down. The New Orleans game on the 4th and 1 where he keeps the ball and he has to dive over Biotish and the Saints defender to convert that 4th down play. You know, that play doesn't make the highlights per se, but it was one of the special plays of this season, and he's had a ton of plays in this season. Man, he's special. He's been special to watch. This team has been special to watch. A lot of guys stepped up and made plays in that ball game, whether it was Diami picking that moment to have what we think probably maybe his best game as a Washington Commander.
Yeah.
He reserved that moment till the playoffs, and so many guys just made key contributions to that win.
We've done this all year. One of the big stories coming in, who's wide receiver 2? And they consistently said they have a group of players that will fill the role game to game. A couple weeks ago, it was Olamide Zaccheaus, had a huge game. Jamison Crowder, off IR, had a huge game-winning catch against Philadelphia. And then last night was Diami's turn. And I remember back in the summer, I looked at him when they were saying who's wide receiver 2, and I'm like, they're going to like him. He's a willing participant. He's physical. He'll block on the edge. He'll play special teams, and he does have speed and good hands. He can get down the field. I think he's going to find a role. And it never really materialized that he was that clear number 2 at any point in time. But as they've asked people to step up in any given moment, be ready for when their moment comes, there he was last night. This has happened over and over and over, too, where they've said, we don't know who it's going to be, but we're going to ask people to step up. And I was really happy for him, someone who's been trying to find a role here for a few years, to have a real massive shining moment last night.
Yeah, no, and it was when I saw him in the locker room, first thing I said to him, man, was, man, way to ball, man. Just way to play, because he's had an up and down career here in Washington. But to have his number called in that critical moment, critical junction in a game on the line, so to speak, because he was the primary on that. They had Terry run the clear out. Terry, you're running the clear out, and Diami is the primary on that. So to get that play call and know, man, my team is trusting me in this moment. They're saying, hey, we feel like you are going to be the guy that we can go to and make a play. And he delivered. And he delivered several times in that ball game.
I mean, it's happened all year. This happened in the Philadelphia game. Crowder hadn't played in weeks. They were running this play in practice. Remember, they told everybody they were running this play in practice that involved him. Game on the line, blind throw before he makes a cut. They trust him. 6 seconds on the clock. I think it's a testament to, they talk about this so much. This team trusts each other in a way that I haven't seen a team here trust each other like this. What is happening is real, which is why I don't put anything past them. Yes, it's great. They got a playoff win. Oh, this is amazing. They won 12 games. You underestimate them at your own risk, because I don't know who the hero is going to be in Detroit, but trust me, it's going to be somebody.
Yeah, and I'll say this. So we talk about, you just mentioned how they trust each other. Now let's dig into why they trust each other. They trust each other because these guys have great relationships off the field. They spend time with each other. They've bonded, and that goes back into the offseason and all the different team building things and bonding moments they had, to where they built up to this situation where we have such a great relationship. We hang off the field. I know you. We have an intimate knowledge of one another. And so when it comes to being on the football field, I'm trusting you to do your job. You're trusting me to do my job. I'm gonna have your back. You're gonna have my back. And that's built off the field. That where you get that type of chemistry, that type of development, that type of, in their words, brotherhood.
I want to give you another stat that I really found amazing. So no touchdowns, no punts. No punts, no turnovers. Sorry, no turnovers, no punts. That's amazing in a playoff game, especially with rookie quarterback. Some of that was they were very bold, as the word they use, and I'll get into the fourth down. That's right. Actually, in most of those cases, they did it on the end of the field where they wouldn't have punted anyway. But we'll get into that in a second. But listen to this one. Time of possession, they won, which I think was enormous key. Tampa Bay's offense has been outstanding this year. Keeping them off the field was a big deal. The 17-play, 92-yard drive was a really big deal. They ended up time of possession winning 35-plus minutes to 24-plus minute difference and a big key. But I think the part that gets me about it that's really, truly remarkable, the run game, 33 carries, 82 yards. That's like nothing. So they somehow controlled the clock without dominating or even being adequate in the run game. It's just a testament that they are capable of making plays when they have to, no matter what, to whoever, under any situation. Like, normally when you win time of possession, you controlled the line of scrimmage and you ran the ball. That's period. That's not what happened yesterday.
No, not at all. You mentioned, I didn't even realize they ran the ball 32 times until after the game, because the run was ineffective as you mentioned. But they went in there with a mindset where you just couldn't say we're going to drop back all day long, because you don't want to get into a pure drop back game. You want the Saints to have to still respect the fact that we will run the football. Like, you have to, be cognizant and respect the fact that we will try to run the ball, whether we're gaining, 4 yards or 5 yards a clip or 1 or 2 yards a clip. We're still going to run the football. And they had a couple. They had big runs when they counted. The Eckler 8-yard run right before Jaden Daniels had the third down conversion. So to be able to get in I think they went from first and 10 to 2nd and 2, and then obviously 3rd and 2 and 3rd and 1, whatever it was, and then he converts. So those are two runs that happened late in the game. But consistently, no, the run game wasn't there, but the volume of runs was there, and that makes a big difference too.
It's me and London Fletcher on the Booth Review. You can get that podcast wherever you get your podcast. You can check it out at commanders.com, the Commanders app, and the Commanders YouTube page. Some thoughts on Mike McCarthy and the Cowboys splitting up next. This is the Bram Weinstein Show on ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. I have to weigh in on Deion Sanders to Dallas, which sounds like, and I think the word is sounds like, isn't happening. I am surprised that Mike McCarthy is not remaining as the head coach of the team for all the reasons that I talked about on this show for months. In the middle of this season, listen, everybody gossips and talks. And in the middle of the season, when Dallas was going through their rut and they had a lot of injuries, and Micah was out, DeMarcus Lawrence was out, Dak would eventually get out. Zach Martin got hurt. All the flaws that they had that were different from what was happening, for like the last couple of years, where did they really have a run game anymore? Was their offensive line good enough anymore? The loss of Dan Quinn, Joe Witt to the defensive staff, things were going to change on that side of the ball. There was going to be an adjustment. Like, I talked about this for months, that to me, there was almost no chance that they were going to replicate, what they had been for the last few years, which was a double-digit team win. Them taking a step back wasn't a big surprise. And then in the summer, Mike McCarthy, I talked about this a lot in his press conference, had kind of like laid down the law that if you're going to find blame in what's going on with the team this year, it was like preemptively, he just kind of pointed the finger at Jerry Jones in the front office and said, look at our team. It's not the same team. You can't expect the same results when you don't have the same team. And I don't think he was wrong. I felt that he was right all along. This was the path I always thought that the Commanders had to potentially surprise everybody and make the playoffs. I never envisioned 12 wins, but I figured if Jaden Daniels really looked the part, and this team was just improved in general, because I didn't think the cupboard was bare coming in here, and then they went out and signed all these veterans and all these, and put a group of players in here that were going to be competitive. I'm like, listen, if Dallas does take a step back and they're not a double-digit win team, and let's just say they're a 9-win team or worse, then the door is going to be open for someone to be the second place team in the NFC East. And if you're the second place team in the NFC East, you have a legitimate shot to be a wild card team. And so this is why I always was kind of optimistic that, well, things may, swing their way. This isn't going to be the NFC North where they have a bunch of teams that are really good, at least two that could be projected to be really good. It ended up being three. I think in the case of the NFC East, it was you assume the Giants would probably struggle. I assume the Cowboys would take a step back. I assume the Eagles, with the best roster and most stability, if you can call it that, would end up winning the division. It's the race to get to second, and then what does second look like, and is that enough to get a wild card? And it all kind of played out. Now, Washington, for certain, I didn't expect it to be this good this fast. So our story isn't done being written. And that's the part that's a little bit surprising and almost like a revival around here. But the Dallas struggles weren't. As the season progressed, by the time we played them, so they actually had their long losing streak end in Landover. They played really competitively. I think it's the one game of the entire season where I think there was, the game planning was they were outcoached. It's like the first time of the entire season. I'm surprised and not surprised. They know Dan Quinn, Joe Witt, so I'm kind of not surprised that they had an advantage there. And from that point forward, McCarthy left them together. They won more than they lost. They were extremely competitive. They were the only team to beat Tampa Bay in their last 7 games until the wild card game. They were competitive in every single one that they had played, and they did it without their quarterback, and they did it without all these other injured players, and a couple of them came back, but the majority did not. Trayvon Diggs went out. Micah Parsons came back. DeMarcus Lawrence never came back. Zach Martin never came back. They were missing 5-6 Pro Bowlers, and he kept it together. And then the players started saying towards the end of the year that they liked playing for him. That was obvious by their actions. And once they had re-signed Dak and had, 3 straight 12-win seasons, once they had re-signed Dak, I actually thought for sure that they were going to ultimately re-sign McCarthy because they've made their bed with this quarterback. Whether he's running the offense or leading the offense, it's working when he's out there. He was a near MVP a year ago. And I thought once they did that they would stick with him. Obviously, they didn't. So now they're moving on. It's probably, and I think actually truly mutual. He probably wanted stability, maybe more say over the roster. I mean, I'm speculating now, probably a longer deal, 4 or 5 years, something that Jones wasn't really comfortable with. Adam Schefter was reporting, before the season ended that Mike McCarthy thinks he has other options. And I thought that was just a leverage play by him and his agents to say something like that. But I now believe it's true, and maybe he won't get another job and it won't get proven out that he gets another job. But maybe he is a lead candidate for the Bears. Maybe he is a lead candidate for the Saints. Maybe he is a lead candidate in another place we're not really thinking of right now that actually he wants to go to, and that he's kind of had this in the works if the Dallas thing didn't work out. Well, they break up we'll probably find out the reasons, in the not too distant future. They break up. And the first name that pops up is Dion. And of course, Dion, among the teams he started for was there. I never took him as a serious candidate for them for one reason and one reason alone. Jerry Jones, typically, he'll hire good coaches, but he doesn't hire the ones that will get more attention than him. He did so when he had Bill Parcells, and the two sides didn't really particularly get along that way. I guess he did so early when he brought in Jimmy Johnson or Barry Switzer, but he then changed his ways. After Parcells, he hired, good coaches, but not ones that stole the attention away from him. If Dion were to come in there, they would have to coexist. Now, they already have a relationship, and it's a premier job. I know what Troy Aikman said last night on TV where he said it's not a coveted job. I do still believe it is. I still look at their roster, and I think that's a really, really good team. They do pay their stars. They get an inordinate amount of attention. Dion likes getting an inordinate amount of attention. His son is going to be a very high draft pick. Travis Hunter's now not going to be at Colorado. Maybe they can continue to replicate this. Maybe they can't. Maybe he doesn't want to try anymore. Maybe he knows it's an uphill battle there, especially without his son playing quarterback. Maybe he wants to coach. Maybe it's a logical move for him. I think the Raiders situation, if they were to draft his son, probably is a little more attractive to him. One, glitz, glamour, doesn't have an ownership thing to deal with, typically under the radar, will be perceived as an underdog because he's in a division with Pat Mahomes and now Bo Nix and against Sean Payton and Andy Reid. And no one's going to just assume that he's going to be able to win in a situation like that. His quote, and I want to read it really quick. His quote about it that they have since Adam Schefter reported that they spoke was this: "To hear from Jerry Jones is truly delightful and it's intriguing. I love Jerry and believe in Jerry. After you hang up and process it and think about it, it's intriguing. But I love Boulder and everything there is about our team, the coaches, our student body, and the community." That's not saying no to it. It's not saying yes. It's insinuating he likes where he is. It's not saying no. Asked about interest from NFL teams back in November, he said, "I'm happy where I am. I've got a kickstand down." Do you know what a kickstand is? It means I'm resting. I'm good. I'm happy. I'm excited. I'm enthusiastic about where I am. I love it here. Truly do. I believe that. I believe he likes being, the lead of an underdog. I think he likes being the supernova of that and being all the sun. He blots out all the sun. He comes to Dallas. He will not blot out entirely everything. The star's bigger than him. Jerry's voice will be important. He will be doing interviews before, after every game. He intends to remain the GM and said so out loud last week. So Sanders would have to work within that context, yet still have one of the most famous sports in the world. He's got to teeter between that. He also has to believe in Dak, because Dak's under contract, and they had already signed him. This is partially why I've been saying for months, I think they should have let Dak's contract play out and make a decision about him after the season and then do that. Because I didn't know the way the season was going to go. I don't think they knew. And I think they were pressured and bullied into doing something when they kind of knew they shouldn't have. Will Deion take this job? Will Jerry actually offer it to him? I don't know. And I don't think so. I think there's a lot of advocates that are going to push for him. It's certainly going to bring a tremendous amount of attention. And Jerry likes that. He likes selling the show. But is he going to bring in someone who's going to be, quote unquote, bigger than him on a week-to-week basis? I don't know, and I doubt it. If it's not going to be Deion, well, I think Cowboys fans maybe, unless they think Kellen Moore's a big home run hire, I think they might be disappointed in who they end up with. And that's the fear here, probably for Jerry too, that he must think about. He's getting a lot of criticism for his role in the team not winning recently and the team state right now and his ability to not get leveraged when he has all these different contracts. Is he going to be able to fight that without hiring someone like this? I'm not sure. He's a very smart guy. He's very smart at messaging, typically. He's very good at showing the fans something that they want. Maybe this is something they need. All right, talk to you tomorrow. Bram watch the show. ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.